Hey everyone, Scott Thomas here. Hope you're having a great semester. As you can see, we're shooting this in my house right now. Wonderful backdrop of my curtain. But today we're going to talk about Chapter 5 of Fatland, How America Became the Fattest Country in the World by Crister. I dove into Chapter 5, what fat is, what fat isn't. So a brief overview of the chapter. Basically, Crister comes out and says and shows examples of how the underserved and underrepresented, less fortunate people are usually the ones that fall victim to high obesity rates. And that's because he gives a couple different instances. One being that poor people are more likely to eat as much as they can at the time because tomorrow isn't promised. And that was the basic gist of that. But then also, he kind of goes into how the federal government almost turned a blind eye to these people. So later on in this video, we'll kind of dive more into like the statistics and the findings from different studies about why Crister believes that the government kind of turned a blind eye and almost caused the soaring rates of obesity in the country. But also, he kind of transitions into this perception of body image, anywhere from anorexia, really thin people, to people that are very obese and have very serious health issues. As Krister kind of started to dive into the perception of body image, he actually kind of split it up into comparing two groups of people, African Americans and Anglo whites, um, which I found very interesting. And there is a difference, and he kind of dives into why there are differences and tries to explain it as best as he can based on other people's studies and his own work. So as I went through this chapter, I made sure to take notes along the way to things that kind of stuck out to me. And one quote that I saw that I thought was very interesting was by Dr. Gloria Wilder-Braithwaite of Georgetown Mobile Pediatric Clinic. And I'll read it right off so I don't get anything wrong here, but it's tiresome being poor. Living in the cocoon of obesity is a very comfortable thing to do. In the last module, we talked about how stress has an impact on where fat is deposited in the body. And I've noticed that many obese people that we see every day, a lot of their fat is deposited in the midsection, much like the people who reported high levels of stress. And it's actually connected to the less fortunate people and the poor people in this world, I think, because being poor is a very difficult thing. Everyday life is hard enough as it is, and not to miss the whole point of this quote. Going back to the comfort thing, I think people who are less fortunate actually seek food for comfort, to kind of relieve that stress. So obviously in the 70s, fast food restaurants were becoming a hot commodity in cities and suburban areas, but they were never really introduced to urban areas because there wasn't a lot of money. However, well into the 70s, the federal government granted the Small Business Administration the right to grant loans to people inside these urban areas and called it urban redevelopment. And this was kind of the start of the government kind of turning a blind eye to the poor people. To reinforce Krister's belief that the government is at least somewhat responsible for the soaring obesity rates, he actually cited a Columbia University research. And in it, the researchers reported that 41% of cartoons in 1993, Saturday cartoons, actually advertised for fast food or bad food choices. You might be wondering why commercials have anything to do with the federal government. Uh, the Federal Trade Commission and the Federal Communication Commissions, they actually sign off on what can be on TV and what cannot be on TV. And in this case, they failed to keep these fast food and high fat foods off the commercials. And now all these kids are seeing these and they're attracted to these high fat foods. Another quote from the chapter that I found very interesting came from anthropologist Deborah Crooks. In the mid 1990s, she said that obesity may be more of a community related phenomenon. I think this is very interesting because you look at the regions like the LA Barrios or the Appalachia or the rural South, you do see a lot more obesity. And in my opinion, this is due to the fact that these are areas that are mostly low income. To wrap this up with my final fun fact from this chapter, and also to kind of dive into where America will be in the future. In 1999, Eli Lilly and Co. built the largest manufacturing plant dedicated to one drug, and that would be insulin. Insulin is used to treat diabetes. Diabetes is a common disease found in people that are very obese, and I think the reason why there's a emphasis on making insulin is there is a more lucrative side to the pharmaceutical world and the pharmaceutical business if they're creating drugs that help treat a disease caused by obesity instead of maybe creating a drug or selling a drug that will help cut obesity out of this great country. These pharmaceutical companies are aware that by creating a drug that will reduce the number of people who are obese in this country, uh, they are aware that it will hurt their bottom line because instead of having a lifetime customer of insulin, instead you have someone who takes a drug for a short period of time, and after they're no longer obese, they no longer need the medication. And that really hurts their bottom line. A little added information according to Crister, insulin sales are growing 24%, at least at Eli Lilly and Co., each year. And why would a pharmaceutical company want to go against that? Why would they create a drug that limits their their customer base, their target population, if you will? Um, so that's all I got today. Chapter 5 was great. Looking forward to reading more in the book, and hope you guys enjoyed the video.